Well, good afternoon. I'm your fireside chat host, Bryan Eberhardt, the Air Force Director for ECS and former assistant professor at the College of Information and Cyberspace at the National Defense University. And today I have the pleasure of introducing Major General retired Jim Keffer, Vice President for Future Warfare Concepts and Cyber at Lockheed Martin Government Services and former Chief of Staff of United States Cyber Command.
There you go, Major.
As a career intelligence officer, Major General Keffer served in numerous positions around the world during his 33 years, culminating as the Chief of Staff for United States Cyber Command. I look forward to his insight and perspective on cyberspace, aerospace, and future warfare concepts today. Sir, thank you for attending HammerCon. Today, before we get to our audience, I'll keep my first few questions focused around the theme for HammerCon, understanding our past to succeed in the present and shape the future. So with that, sir, first question.
Well, first let me say a couple of things. Bryan, thanks for being here. Thanks for being the moderator. Bryan, I had the honor a while back, a couple years ago. 1 year?
That's one.
Quite fast. But I had the honor of putting the Order of the Thor on Bryan for all his tremendous work during his career, and for especially the last tour at this College of Science there at the National Defense University. So really proud of what you did and everything you did for the nation. Okay. Oh, the other thing I want to mention is HammerCon. If you're not here, you're missing out. The numbers just went up significantly. Last year they had about 350. This year it's doubled. And maybe the attraction was the Mission Barbecue. The line is long, the food is great, but seriously, the camaraderie, the cooperation, the collaboration that's taken place, the new friendships that are being honed, the old ones that are being revived. Just saw a Command Sergeant Major that I worked with at Cyber Command. He escaped from DC and is now living in Montana. Another friend, Guy Walsh, that I've known forever, was in Austin, Texas, or San Antonio, Texas, and moved up here, and now he's a senior leader at the National Defense Industrial Association, and many other people. So if you're not here, put it on your calendar for next year because you don't want to miss it. So, Bryan, over to you.
All right, sir. First question. General Nakasone recently stated that cybersecurity is national security. As the former U.S. Cybercom Chief of Staff, do you see this statement as a foundation on which to build future cyberspace requirements, or the continuation of past cyberspace operations in a historically contested and congested domain?
It's really both. General Nakasone and I, we've worked together for a long time. He's done a heck of a lot better than I ever did. And he was the right leader at the right time to take Cyber Command and NSA together. If you've been to the East Campus, had the privilege of taking the CEO to see General Nakasone about a month ago. That new East Campus, the new building, is just tremendous. And it's a tribute to the workforce that works there, the military, the civilians, and the contractor force that do this great work for the nation. So is cybersecurity national security, to quote General Nakasone? Yeah, I think we'd all agree that it is. It needs to be. As an intelligence professional for a lot of years of my life, I always looked at things from the enemy side, from the threat side, and I tried to mimic it from our U.S. side. And so I look at the tremendous growth that we've had over the years with in networking and in connectivity. I remember back when computers start showing up on your desks. Before we did, when I started working, we didn't have a computer on our desk. A young kid asked me once. He said, "Then what did you do? What did you do all day?" That, believe it or not, you have phone calls, typewriters, pencils, memo pads, all that. And I remember the thing that got me once when we first had these computers on our desk, and I said, "Boy, this is pretty powerful." And this is starting out from the beginning. I got an email from the Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force everybody in the Air Force got one. You know, it's one of these mass mailing. But it got to me in 45 minutes. It's like, wow, that is awesome. He hit everybody in 45 minutes. And that showed kind of the power of where we are. And look where we are now. And so we become more and more, as a nation, more and more dependent on connectivity, on the internet. We do everything on there now. And I keep thinking about it from the bad guy side. So as we develop those capabilities, bad guys were also developing counters. It's the way the world works, right? Good stuff that's developed, bad people will take that good stuff and turn it for bad. Adversaries will turn it for the bad. And so the focus on cybersecurity kicked in, and that's not going to end. So yeah, it was a past requirement that we needed, and it's going to continue into the future. There's no end. You know, 10 years, 15 years ago, people were asking, CEOs were asking, how much can I pay to have cybersecurity go away? Let me put in X amount of dollars. Here you go, CIO. Probably wasn't a CIO back then, but here you go, IT guys. Make cybersecurity go away, and it doesn't work that way. It's a continuous spectrum. Whenever it's like the old electronic warfare. You know, you develop something, the adversary develops a counter. You develop a counter to the counter to the counter to the counter, and there's no end because it's a chess game. And so we've got to keep investing in cybersecurity, and especially in the critical infrastructure sector. Because if I'm a bad guy, and we've got, you know, for the government right now, it's China, China, China. And then we've got the Russians that are pretty good in the cyber arena also. They have I'll say a longer term look. And, you know, the difference I see between China and Russia, China wants to own us. Russia wants to destroy us. And so the Russian government, I should say the Communist Party and the Russian leadership, not the people themselves. And so you have to tackle that with two different mindsets when you go after trying to protect your critical infrastructure. You've got to keep some out that are going after targets that want to destroy you, and then you have to keep others out that want to gain your IP, gain your technical knowledge, overcome you, and beat you in the long game. The Chinese are very good at that long game. You know, that they came out, President Xi, a while back, a couple of years ago, came out with China 2049, a plan in China, 2049, 100 years of the Communist Party. He's got a plan for China for 2049. Can you imagine the U.S. coming up with the U.S. 2049? We don't look that far down. They are. This is a long-term game they're at. So yeah, 2 weeks, you know, maybe a year, and we turn much faster. So that's the thing that worry about in the future. You learn from the past, but then you carry it on into the future, and then you got to understand your adversary to make sure that you get into their mindset and how would they react. And if we ever get into a conflict with China, you know, how do you think that's going to go out? If I was in the Chinese leadership, I'd probably want to stop things early before they happen. Stop movements, stop trains from moving, ships from floating, airplanes from flying. Trying to do that. So, how do you do that? That's through cyber means. So yeah, the cybersecurity does not go away. It would be a future. It'll be an enduring future requirement.
So you mentioned that it took about 45 minutes for the chief to send an email out to the entire service, where today it might take 45 seconds for an adversary to get something viral around the world. So based on that, the present cyberspace operations in Ukraine have some believing the past cyberspace operations in the theater shaped the potential for future events. Do you see any Russian successes or failures in cyberspace as a stage setter for informing how operations in the cyber domain are conducted in the future?
Yeah. First, I don't use that term Russian successes because I don't want to give them any leeway. You know, they've shown themselves to be very incompetent. Thank goodness. they came. I think part of why we didn't, and Microsoft wrote a really good report on the cyber activity at the beginning of the conflict. It's out there. It's out there if you want to see it. But I think why we didn't see more in the beginning. A couple of reasons. Probably the biggest reasons I think are they thought it was going to be a cakewalk. They thought they were going to roll in and the Ukrainians were going to throw up their hands and hey, our liberators are here. And because the Russian officers, this has been out in the news, that were in line to go into Ukraine, they were told to take their mess dress with them, their fancy uniforms with them, because there were going to be parades in the streets and things like that. That didn't quite happen. That miscalculating your enemy. The other reason I think the Russians weren't successful with cyber operations. Remember back in 2015, 16, the Russians did some attacks on the Ukrainian power grid. And that was kind of a wake-up call for the Ukrainians that, hey, we better shore up our stuff. This is in the news. The U.S. went in there and helped them out. Others went in and helped them out with their infrastructure. They moved their data centers out of country and put them in Poland and I think other countries. So the infrastructure that the Ukrainians had was hardened, was more secure than what they had before. And if you've ever done cyber operations, it's just, it's not like in the movies where you some kid at a computer builds a tool and then breaks in. There's a lot, especially if you're going after critical infrastructure, there's a lot of research that goes into it. You got to find pathways to get to where you want to go. And then you got to make sure they keep open. And like patch Tuesdays is always, for cyber operators, is always scary because you don't know how that's going to affect your equipment or your access and things like that. So those are two reasons why I think the Russians weren't as successful. The third one, I'm not sure I agree with this, but I've heard people say they're just holding back. They're just holding. So if they really need to use it, they will use it. I think they've gotten to the point where they've reached that point where they would have decided they need to use it because they really need to use it because they're losing ground. I would have expected a lot more out of the Russians.
So at this time, I'll take a break from my list of questions. And is there any in the audience? Please.
There's a question for you. This has to do with CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency on the DHS. And in reference to defense, obviously, CISA is supposed to be that bridge between the federal government and the private. As you mentioned in one of your previous answers, you said that they would attack the private side to try to slow things down so we could not react as fast. I know there's a lot of issues with that between corporate and federal and getting them to cooperate. Do you see that any ways that could be accelerated to create something that will allow them, incentivize them to work closer together? Because I know that's always been an issue in the past.
Yeah. From speaking for Jim Keffer, not for the company, here's how I see that going. And I based that on some of the things that Jen Easterly has done and working with industry and also based on the latest national cybersecurity strategy. So I've known Jen since she was a lieutenant colonel. The director,
Yes.
Assistant director. And she's known General Nakasone forever. They grew up together. They're tight, and so what a great combination for the nation. To protect the nation on the defensive side and bring industry together. There was a couple of attempts to put in legislation back in 2015 to force more of that integration, more sharing. That didn't go as far as it should have. Jen, in her time, she's built out this joint collaborative JCC, Joint Collaborative Partnership Program. Anybody can help me out, JCC? Anyway, it's a organizational construct where industry can come in and join, and there's sharing going on. There's also the national security strategy. It opened the door.
Details.
It's got a lot of details in it.
Light, it is light.
It opens the door for more. That's what I was getting at. It opens the door for more regulation. So right now, it's making industry, as they read through at least with my company, as we read through the national cybersecurity strategy. We don't want more regulation. Typically, regulation goes against what industry wants to have put in place because it kind of ties hands. But that regulation is needed because it's for the betterment of the country as a whole. And so you need some regulation, but we try to do on the industry side, we try to minimize that. And so seeing that door is maybe cracking open wider, I think that'll bring more industry together. The big companies are doing really well in working with the government. The DHS has a program called the Critical Infrastructure Partnership Advisory Council, or CyPac. And that gives a legal basis for the U.S. government to meet with industry on a variety of issues. One of them is on cybersecurity. So we have this industry government meeting already to share, but it doesn't take all of industry together. And so you got the big companies that have the resources to put into cybersecurity, into participating with government, into helping shape policies and things like that. And then you have the medium and the smaller companies, and the small companies, they're in a survival mode. One of the things I did between my retired time and time I started working for Lockheed was I was a one-man consultant. So I worked with big companies, medium, small. That was hugely enlightening. Big companies, they got the resources, they can put a bag of money towards cybersecurity, they can protect their network, hire the right people. You get the small companies, they're in survival mode. They're trying to sell their widget, their technology, their capability, get some funding. And so that when you take out the regulation that says you have to implement 110 controls in order to be compliant, it's like they don't have the time and the money to do that. And so that's why you've seen that CMC, the cybersecurity maturity model, kind of sputter, and it's still sputtering. How do you
get out 2.0?
Yeah. How do you bring the small companies along? And some of the big companies are saying, okay, let's put an umbrella together and have them, go through us, use our services for a little fee, and just to keep the structure going. But then the small companies are reluctant to do that because it's like, I'm not going to have my network touch your network. You're going to take my stuff. And so trust. I think that's the big word. Like I'll give you a great example from my industry, the defense industry. So we have all the big primes, Raytheon, Lockheed, Northrop, BAE, Leidos. They all have CISOs. They all get together every 2 weeks. They are like brothers and sisters. In fact, we were talking to Chris Sink when Chris was the National Cybersecurity Director, who brought in all the CISOs and had a session with them to help with the strategy. And he asked one question. He said, if one of you got attacked, who would you call first? And they all said, we call each other first. It's like, now, wouldn't that be nice to have that spread across industry? That's where we got to get to. That's where Jen is trying to take industry together. It's building that trust. Because once you got the trust, the rest is easy. And then trust takes time. And all it takes is one event to kind of break that trust, and it's hard to regain.
Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative.
Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative. Thank you very much.
Sir, we've got about 3 minutes remaining, so I'll either take a quick question from the audience, if there's any, otherwise I'll close with my final question.
I'll do a quick one.
Please.
All right, so if the rumors are true and General Brown has a new job,
and Congress's huge desire to have Jim Keffer come back to be the Air Force Chief of Staff. What will you do in that first year to advance Air Force cyber?
My first year to advance it as the Chief of Staff of the Air Force?
Yes.
You mean the Secretary of the Air Force?
No,
Yeah.
no, you're gonna be back to.
Oh, back on that. Okay.
Congress gets to help.
First, I would automatically promote all the cyber warriors out there in one grade up. And that would get more people interested. No, the challenge, and we all face it, it's the workforce, it's the technical workforce across the board. We got to do better as a nation. We got to do better in the services. I ran the 70th one for a while, had 7,000 airmen all over the world. We were a mill. Our young airmen would come in, Sergeant Major, you saw that too, young soldiers would come in. They work in this enterprise and say, man, this is great, and then we lose them to the enterprise. But I saw that as okay because we were just feeding what needed to be done. So if we can bring in more young people into the cyber business through the military, and then push them out into industry, it hurts the military to lose them, but it helps the U.S. overall. So I'm good with that.
Thanks.
Sir, Bryan,
It's been a pleasure.
thank you very much. All right, take care.
Gentlemen.